Dr. Mac.
Yes, ma'am.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Man, it's Friday. I could not wait. This is my favorite day of the week.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I,
Always, always has been.
exactly. And I know that you are ready for it. Even though your work never stops, I know that you need a little break for the weekend as well with everything that's going on.
Yes, 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 definitely.
Yeah. So once again, thank you for doing these updates for us every single week. And uh, thank you for being my partner in crime. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Miss April. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I
So
appreciate it.
we don't know where our other partner in crime is right now, but if she joins us, we'll certainly put her in the stream so she can join
Yes,
the conversation and
yes.
make it happen. But we've got a lot that we want to talk about today in terms of the latest stats relating to COVID-19, which is what we've been doing for the past 16 weeks now, and just want to shed some more light on our situation and to talk to our loyal viewers about what's going on and what they can expect and give them a little bit more to think about. Of course, we want to remind everyone that if you have comments or questions, you can certainly put them in the comment thread, and we'll navigate through all the good stuff and see if we can't research what we don't know, but we're going to definitely give you what we do know from our most reputable source, Dr. Winston MciVer Jr. here today. So if you will, please share this live stream. So I just want you all to take one moment to click the share button wherever you are viewing from. If you're viewing from my personal page, and also if you're viewing from YouTube, will you please share the live stream so that we can make sure that everyone has an opportunity to view this? And also from the Whittemore Community Magazine's page, you can share from there as well. So just want to say hello to a couple of our viewers. Hello, Ms. DK Reeves. We do appreciate you being with us every single week. And Jesseline Peck, thank you for giving us good information. She keeps us on our toes. I just want you to know.
That's my buddy.
Yeah, she's always posting stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'll go ahead and post it because she's trying to help us stay in the know. And Cookie Vandross Brown from Columbia, we appreciate you. Of course, Terry Dow McLean, thank you for joining us. And Ms. Bonnie Edie, we will give a shout out as much as we can to all of our viewers. We really do appreciate you. So, Dr. Mac, are you ready to get into this good stuff?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
All right, so I'm gonna just kind of go over to a little screen real quick. We've got a lot of information to share with you. Please feel free to take notes. And remember, when you are viewing information, just be mindful of the source. I do want to preface everything by saying that, and that's why we always follow Dr. Mac, because we know that he's going to do the proper research and give us as much information as possible. So, Dr. Mac, here's some information that we want to share with everybody, just to kind of give them a perspective of what we're dealing with and what we've been dealing with over these past 16 weeks.
Right. So what will happen is that, let me get into the world stats first, and then we'll come back to this.
Okay.
Specifically, the numbers in the last week, the total number of cases worldwide for COVID-19 have gone from 12.5 million to 14 million. The number of deaths in the past week have gone from 559,000 to 595,000. In the US, the number of cases have gone from 3.2 million to 3.7 million in the last week. And the number of deaths in the US have gone from 136,000 to 142,000. Specifically in South Carolina, we'll get into a little bit more information about South Carolina in a little bit, but specifically in the past week, the number of cases have gone from a little over 52,000 to a little over 64,000 cases. And the number of deaths in South Carolina in the last week has gone from 922 to 1,070 deaths. Specifically in Horry County, the number of cases have gone from 5,300 cases up to 6,300 cases in the last week. The number of deaths in South Carolina have gone from 67 to 70. The number of deaths in Horry County, have gone from 67 to 79 in the last week. In Georgetown, the number of cases in the last week have gone from 729 to 911, with Georgetown County's deaths in the last week going from 7 to 10. Marion County, the number of cases have gone from 299 to 349, and the number of deaths have gone from 9 to 10. Now, looking at the first slide that we have up, which is, really amazing, is that, it took 95 days to get, to 1 million cases in the United States. An additional 43 days it took to reach 2 million. Additional 28 days, it's reached 3 million. Now, a lot of this is because there are more testing that's being done. But again, let's make it clear, we still are not testing as frequently as we should be testing. Okay. But again, as these tests go up, of course, lately what we've been seeing is, the stat where more people are actually, living, are less percentage or ratio of people are dying, but that's because they're younger people that are getting this. However, the hospital admission rates are booming, and that's how you actually tell if the virus is progressing, is spreading. In Horry County specifically, for those of you who not familiar with Horry County, in the Myrtle Beach area, in the month of June, the hospitalization rate in this area went up 966% in the month of June. So what's happening is, it appears that the younger folks are testing positive. It appears that they're passing it to the older folks, or the more sickly folks, who are ending up in the hospital. Now, an unfortunate predictor is that, the number of cases and deaths will likely start to go up some too, because you're just having more people hospitalized. And although the vast majority of people will live, we still are having people that unfortunately may not have an immune system that's going to be strong enough to have them fight this off.
Dr. Mack, as the hospital admission rates go up, what are we seeing in terms of hospital capacities? I know that there's a lot of talk about some hospitals being over capacity or not having enough space.
Right.
Yeah.
The three main hospitals in the area are, basically packed to the rim with patients. They're having to open up extra floors, extra wings, just to accommodate COVID patients. So that is a significant problem, in addition to a number of these hospitals having employees that are being physicians and employees that are being positive. So again, that's something that is a major issue. Like I said, just tons and tons of folks, that have tested positive, that are healthcare workers and have died. And it's really sad that, what has happened is this has kind of become an issue of a political issue of whether or not to wear masks and do the kind of things that need to be done. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well.
So tracking Corona, new cases, new deaths in the United States. What's going on with that?
Right. So in other words, on July the 11th, and this data comes out weekly, so this tracking should come up later today or tomorrow to update on this. But over the past week, we've seen a 53% increase in the 14-day trend in cases that are there. And new deaths, as we see that little green line started going down, but as we see that green line is starting to go up, and that's tracking the 14-day trend as well. States that are rising the fastest, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. You see Montana's going up, North Dakota, West Virginia's going up highest, and Louisiana's starting to take a turn up. Tennessee started flattening off, but it's going up. Kentucky's going up. Idaho and Hawaii are all going up.
Dr. Mack, there was a comment, Tabitha Dozier, Thomas in Charleston. Thank you so much for joining us today. When we were talking about the Horry County death cases in the last week, are they all attributed to COVID-19?
Yeah, those deaths that I gave, they are attributed to COVID-19.
Okay. All right.
Now, although pneumonia may be on the death certificate as well, it will have pneumonia, related to COVID-19.
Okay. All right. So as we take a look at daily new confirmed cases, and this is the U.S. compared to countries outside, of course, other countries, what do we have going on here?
Well, we're seeing the U.S. is rising up. The slope is going way up, whereas other countries are going down. And those countries, Italy, Germany, UK, Spain, those are people that governments really stepped in and advocated social distancing, physical distancing, mask, the kind of things that needed to be talked about to get the pandemic under better control in those areas. But as we see, the U.S. is starting to go up. Now, the concern here is a couple fold. In the United States, there are three big holidays that we really kind of have a good time with, festive type times during the summer. We're talking about Memorial Day, we're talking about the 4th of July, and we're talking about Labor Day that's coming up. Now, the problem is after each of these holidays, you'll expect the numbers to start to go up anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks, 2 to 5 weeks after those holidays. So right now, we're just starting to see the numbers from the 4th of July. Not to mention around here in the Myrtle Beach area, we just had Bike Week. We just finished up with a 10-day county fair. We've got Labor Day that's right around the corner. And so you wouldn't expect to see the results of Labor Day until somewhere around the end of September, 1st of October.
Right.
And by that time, we'll be back in cold and flu and pneumonia season.
Yeah. So, and I think that's one thing that we've always reiterated is the fact that, after the major holidays, you're not going to see it like 24 hours afterwards, but you can kind of forecast how long it's going to take for those cases to start to show up in our area. So when we think about, the Labor Day holiday that's coming up, and the fact that, of course, now Horry County is talking about starting classes on September the 8th, that's going to be close to about the time when we'll start to see a rise in cases. Is that safe to assume?
Right. Unfortunately, that's the likely trend if this is following trends from before. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So now as we continue to talk about coronavirus cases in the U.S., Florida and Texas, let's talk about Florida and Texas.
Florida, Texas, and Arizona are booming. This graph actually came from CNN, and basically Florida and Texas just 48 hours ago had record single-day highs in deaths, and it's concerning because again you're seeing these numbers going up. These people are desperately needing room for hospital beds, ICUs, ventilators, and those kind of things. It's really only 2 states that had a significant decrease in the number of cases, and that was Maine and New Hampshire. Other than that, everybody else either stayed the same or got worse.
Okay. All right. So cases by county, we'll start talking about that. And before we get deep into it, we're going to take a little commercial break because we don't have another special guest for today. We're really going to just be covering the coronavirus data that Dr. MciVer has for us today. And then, of course, we want to take some of your questions and comments as you kind of study this information that we're giving you right now. And you think about what's to come in the next, I would say, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. So, Dr. Mack, if you'll start talking or talk to us a little bit about the cases in county or by county.
If we can drop down to the next slide first.
Okay.
Okay. Just to kind of round out one of the hot spot states, looking at the number of cases, new confirmed cases in Florida compared to European countries. I mean, as you see, Florida is spiking up. The same thing similar with Texas, the same thing similar with Arizona. It's just those areas are hot spots. And right now, Miami is actually being considered the new epicenter of coronavirus in the United States, with a number of cases that are actually exploding there.
All right. So again, we're going to get into some county local information. I'm going to give Dr. Mack a second to catch his breath. We'll come right back and get a little bit more into this topic. Good afternoon, JD Spain from Northern Virginia. We appreciate you being with us today, and just hold tight, guys. We will be right back.
Your child deserves the best in life. Grow through learning and positive moments. Caring through love, nurturing, and support. Security in a clean, safe environment. Your child deserves your neighborhood child care and development center. 1100 Quill Street, Conway, South Carolina. ABC certified and USAID approved. Call 843-248-0560 or 843-248-3584 for enrollment information.
Your neighborhood child care and development center is open 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, enrolling children ages 6 weeks to 12 years old, serving Conway and all surrounding communities, offering after-school care with a professional, ethnically diverse staff. Your neighborhood child care and development center. Call today. And we're back with Dr. Winston MciVer Jr., Waccamaw Primary Care. Again, thank you, Dr. Mack, for being with me today. I really do appreciate it. We are covering COVID-19 stats, our weekly update. We've been bringing you these weekly updates for about 16 weeks now. I'm doing tally marks on the wall. See how far we go with this. And you've given us some really good information as far as that worldview of what's happening with the coronavirus, where it's spiking, where it's leveling off. And now we're going to get into this local stuff. So let me switch on over and bring you up so that you can give us the skinny on what's going on in our backyard. Okay.
All right. So just kind of looking at some areas in the Carolinas, specifically looking at some of the counties, some of the close counties in North Carolina, Robeson County, Scotland County, and then looking at those numbers, 1,757 and 180 cases as of July 15th, respectively. And then you get into the South Carolina counties, Horry, of course, with astronomical numbers, primarily because we've got Myrtle Beach right here. Florence County, Darlington, Dillon, Georgetown is there, Marlborough and Marion. And again, these are of positive cases. It's estimated that out of every one person that tested positive is probably 7 to 10 more people that are positive that have not gotten tested. So that's some numbers to kind of keep in mind when you kind of estimating or kind of imagining how many people actually probably are positive with COVID-19.
So give us that stat one more time.
So it's estimated that anywhere between 7 to 10 people, and I've seen stats as high as 12, but for every one person that's positive, it's estimated that 7 to 10 people have COVID but have not gotten tested.
Wow. I'm trying to put it in perspective when I think about people returning to work and how many people are actually on work staffs and
Right. And the latest data says that about 40% of people with COVID-19 have no symptoms at all. We're not talking about the people that have mild symptoms or a few symptoms. We're talking about it's estimated up to 40% of people that don't have any symptoms whatsoever.
So now you can't even go by just the idea of a sniffle or a cough or anything else being a sign.
The majority of people will have some symptoms, but again, upwards of 40 will not have any.
And that's something that has significantly changed over the course of this virus, right?
It has, as the number of young people started getting tested.
Okay.
So that's the reason why it's important for folks to get tested. But more importantly, folks to get tested who have been around other people who have been positive.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So again, if you know that you've been around somebody that's been positive, you need to get tested.
Absolutely.
If you've been to an area, if you're from Virginia and you've come to Myrtle Beach in the last month, you should get tested.
Okay. So now let's take a look at the COVID-19 stats for South Carolina.
Right. So this is just kind of a summary of what we had talked about already to the sense. But the biggest thing is that we're looking at the number of hospital beds that are in use in South Carolina. That's about 77, a little over 7,000, whereas in use for COVID is over 1,500. That percent change is up almost 20%. Now, one thing that you hear a lot of people talk about if you listen to this on TV is they're talking about the positivity rate, In other words, what percentage of people that get tested are actually positive? A very good positivity rate would be less than 5%. A so-so positivity rate would be less than 10%. In South Carolina, we're at 21, 22%. So in other words, almost one out of 4, 1 out of 5 people that are being tested are positive. That positivity rate is important because in that area, like I said, well, you know that, like I said, for every one that's positive, you probably got 7 to 10 that are positive that hadn't gotten tested. So a lot of counties and states are using the positivity rate as a means of opening things up. When you've got a high positivity rate, you're flirting with a potential disaster if you're trying to open things up too fast. That's what happened in Florida. That's what happened in Texas. And that's what happened in Arizona. They opened up these places before the positivity rate got low.
Okay.
So that's what ends up happening if you open up things prematurely.
If all remains on track for school openings September 8th, in your best, I guess, use of imagination, where would that positivity rate possibly, where could it possibly spike to after we open for school?
It depends on what kind of plans the schools have. It depends on what the numbers look like in the general population in the area. If you go to that next slide, it will tell you about the number of cases that we have and the breakdown distribution. So if you look at the highest percentage of positive cases, it's in the 21 to 30-year-old age range at 22%. But if you look at the 11 to 20, that's at 11%. That's still a significant amount. And then, you see it likewise. I won't go through the whole numbers, but you see how it kind of tapers off. But there's concern because, again, if you've got people that are in the 11 to 30-year-old is making up a third of the cases. This graph from DHEC, ages 11 to 30 are making up 1/3 of the positive cases in South Carolina.
Exactly. 33%. Exactly.
So that's important. That coupled with the positivity rate, coupled with the hospital beds that are, hospital increased rates in hospitalizations for COVID, those things are not a good recipe. Now, I've got 2 kids that are still in school. Certainly, I want them to be in school as well. But I think that it just has to be done in the right way, with the right guidance, with the right plan in place to make this happen. But the numbers, I'm not making these numbers up. I'm getting these numbers from all the sources that I have, including DHEC, and this is where this graph comes from. 1/3 of the cases in South Carolina are from 11 to 30 years old.
There's a little bit of a misconception about the first column on this graph in terms of whether or not kids under 10 can actually contract COVID-19. I even read earlier this week that there was possibly a case in an 8-month-old. What do we know about the likelihood that even our younger kids may see, or we may see an increase in the number of cases in our younger children?
Well, it it appears that the younger kids are not as susceptible. That's what it appears. And there's a lot of theories that are out as to why that is. Certain receptors in the body, ACE, ARB receptors that seem to be somewhat of a door opener or a mediator for this virus to make its way into the cells, that adults have these receptors more than kids have them. That's one theory that's out as to why you're not seeing it in kids as much, but we don't know. And again, we have not experienced this really, to our knowledge, during a winter time. So kids usually get more sniffles. They usually get those kind of things during the winter months. The concern is what is this going to look like during the winter months for kids? Will this still hold true that they're on the lower end of the spectrum, or once they get together, will it create more situations? We just don't know. Don't know.
Exactly. So it's definitely going to be the thing to watch, especially as we return to school. So now we're going to go into some very specific zip code information.
Yes. So in this area, well, let me say it this way before I get started on that. There's 534 zip codes in South Carolina. 534 zip codes in South Carolina. During the time period from June 23rd to July 14th, June 23rd to July 14th, the zip code that's in the Socastee area has gone from the 7th highest number up to number 3. And that's a 341% increase during that time period.
What are y'all doing in Socastee?
The next is Carolina Forest. It stayed the same at 4th during that time period. The next would be Conway going from 9th to 8th. And next would be Myrtle Beach going from 14th to 9th. So what is that saying? That's saying out of the 534 zip codes in South Carolina, 4 of the top 9 are in Horry County. Let me repeat that. Out of the 534 zip codes in South Carolina, 4 out of the top 9 zip codes are in Horry County. If that doesn't make you worry, you don't have much of a heart, because that's staggering. And that is before we get the 4th of July numbers, and before we get the Labor Day numbers. We know what happens around here during the 4th of July. The numbers go up of people. We know what's going to happen Labor Day, because that pretty much marks the end of summer. We know what's going to happen. More people are going to come. Again, whenever you're talking about a positivity rate that's above, that's in the 20s, that's worrisome. That's very, very worrisome. That's too many folks. Heck, that's 1 out of 4. Approaching 1 out of 4. Another thing I do want to mention along these lines is that a study that was done in France that looked at a little under 100 patients who had COVID-19, and it was an antibody testing study. Now, what it showed was after 3 months of these people having COVID-19, 16% of these people, only 16% of these people had very high antibody levels, which is very much a worry, because these people should be holding on to antibodies longer than that. And some of the people in the study had no detectable antibodies after 3 months. So the concern there is that you can't really say if you've had it before, you'll be immune. Now, these studies need to be done further. And I'm actually about to participate in some antibody studies to basically look and see what's going on with these antibodies and how long are folks holding on to these antibodies. The second thing is that, antibodies can kind of give you some idea of how to proceed. So in other words, if people were having antibodies and if it was shown that the antibodies were protective, then you could say, okay, this person's been positive, they've been infected, they're likely not to get it again. I've been asked 4 times today, if I get COVID once, can I get it again? And we don't know that for sure. What we do know is that there have been case reports that physicians have said they've had positive patients who've gotten it twice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question is, was it that this person got the second test too soon and they still had viral particles that made that second test positive? Or was it that they actually did get they got infected a second time? And that those studies are still ongoing about, can this happen again and in what time period? But a lot of that deals with the antibodies.
Dr. Mack, does the virus behave like, let's say, the flu? When some people get the flu and they feel like they may be over it and they might get out too soon and have what people term as a relapse. Is that, are there any studies that support that people could possibly get out too soon?
Yeah, there have been some studies that have shown, and I think this is definitely the exception and not the rule, that people can actually shed this virus up to 4 to 6 weeks afterwards. Now, I certainly don't certainly don't think that that's the norm, but again, I do think that, well, it has been shown that that's been the case, where people have tested positive and still had some antigen, which is the particles of the virus, antigen still present.
Yeah, that's definitely alarming to know that it could exist 4 to 6 weeks after, because I think once people start feel like themselves, so to say, and they're ready to get out into the world, there's just that possibility, like you said, the shedding.
Right, and let me make this clear too. The shedding doesn't necessarily mean it's shedding at a level to be infected. However, if you've got a person that's an older person, a weaker immune system, that has more medical problems, it wouldn't take much of the viral particle to affect them as it does somebody who doesn't have any problems at all. So there's levels of virus, levels of infectiousness as well.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the next map or next slide as we talk about the coronavirus cases. Again, we're looking at information that's global information, but then also our local information. And I think it's good to just kind of, make these comparisons as Dr. Mack has been doing over these past few weeks. So what we see here is the coronavirus in Israel, but the question is, how can school be open safely? And this graph is going to just kind of give you some idea of what happens if you open to.
Right. So giving credit to CNN, this is where this came from. And to the left of that solid line was when, as they started noticing more peaks in the number of cases, that very top line on the left was when they started closing schools down in Israel. As they closed the schools down, they got to that solid line to where they started flattening their curve, and then they started opening schools up. So to the right of that curve is, as the schools started opening up, the number of cases started going up.
Okay. Don't know what happened. I guess they don't want us to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it today.
Right.
Hold on for a second.
So again, I'm not saying that schools shouldn't be open. I'm just saying that caution, care, thoughtful processes, how we think, how we're going to do this needs to be definitely in play. And then there has to be some threshold of, at what point in time do we consider shutting these schools down if the numbers start to go up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the next slide kind of goes along with just kind of talking about the numbers in general. Again, this came from the CDC. Children 17 and under make up about 6%, 6.4% of all cases. They make up just around 1% of the hospitalizations, and make up of less than 0.5% of deaths, which are all true. However, we don't know what this is going to be when we get into cold and flu season. So I just hope that these numbers continue to trend downward in children, and that this is not an issue for adults or children, but it's something that needs to be looked at. These demographics need to be followed. This information needs to be followed, because again, there has to be some threshold at what point in time do you consider it being too much of a risk. Okay. Now this graph just shows, on average in the United States, to the right, when schools, that first arrow, when schools were stopped because the numbers were starting to go up, or fear that numbers would go up, and then the arrow to the left, the arrow to the right then shows where we are right now. So again, it just kind of gives some idea that we're technically in worse shape right now than we were when schools were closed in March. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm just giving this information. It is what it is. These numbers are what they are.
And as we, talk about the fact that the numbers are what they are, and yet we're going to be, moving forward real soon, business as usual. I know in, some school districts, they're opening sooner than we are here in Horry County. I guess after we go through the slides and we talk about the data, let's just try to remind parents of, what they can do now to kind of shore up, their resources and get ready for what's obviously at this point seems inevitable, which is a return to school. And, I know that there's not a whole lot that will give everybody peace of mind right now. All we have right now are the options that have been presented by the governor's office. But at the same time, we all have to be educated about what we are getting ready to go into. And so, when you look at a graph like this, you're right, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But because we're not really running the show, and we have to, we have very hard decisions that we have to make for the sake of our families and our children. Taking this information and using as much education as you can to get ready means that that's about all we can do right now. And if you know now what you need to do, then maybe you can continue to ask questions, and also, give your thoughts to your administrators, your schools, people who need to know how parents are feeling, and what you need in terms of resources to help you feel comfortable with your children returning to school. So when we think about all of that as well, we go into this particular scenario here with the coronavirus data being sent to Washington instead of the CDC.
This is probably the most distressing thing I've seen in the last couple of weeks. So now what's happening is these hospitals, well, let me back up and say it. The CDC is a branch of the Department of Health and Human Services, okay? The CDC has always been that branch that had the researchers, the scientists, the physicians that would evaluate medical conditions, medical situations, not only in the United States, but throughout the world that could potentially infect or involve the United States. I'm not saying the CDC is a perfect place, because certainly there's been some issues there with some of the initial testing. I am somewhat partial to CDC. My scholarship to college was through the CDC, and it was as a result of trying to make sure that more minority students were trained as a result of what happened with the Tuskegee experiment. So that's a whole nother topic, and we can talk about that some other time. But that was my scholarship to college, was that so I have worked with the CDC. I have done epidemiological studies and biostatistics studies through the CDC. So what's happened is the CDC has always been that branch of the Health and Human Services that was the research branch that basically was involved in preparing the United States. When Ebola came out, the CDC sent researchers over to Africa to try to help them to help contain this, for one, but for two, to try and reduce any spread to the United States. So now the CDC's hands have been tied. primarily and or after the CDC put out their guidelines on return to school, and the president thought that the guidelines were too tough. So when he asked the CDC and Dr. Redfield, to go back and redo the recommendations, then this happens. So the concern is that why now and why this? Why is all the information being sent to some place other than where it was originally intended to be sent? It smells, it's not a good look, and it's why change it now? I mean, the numbers are going up. Why would you change midstream who sends what? The hospitals are kind of in a tough situation because, you know, if they don't comply, there's a chance that they may lose federal funding.
Yeah.
So this is concerning. This is worrisome. This is, in my estimation, an attempt to control the narrative. And it's in essence what we look, quote unquote, we look at other countries as doing, controlling the narrative in their countries, and we're appearing to do the same thing.
Yeah. And, you know, that level of control is dangerously out of control. And I don't know how, on the one hand, you can say, you know, it's time to get back to work, time to get back to school. You know, we got to get back to business as usual, but you're not willing to be transparent about the information that people need in order to figure out how to do that and do it safely.
Right.
So, you know, we've got a long haul, aside from the fact that the numbers are going to increase. Now we have to deal with not really knowing concretely what's happening as a result of these, you know, additional activity, things that aren't happening. I don't know, Dr. Mack, it just kind of, it's definitely unnerving. Right. And I don't even have a child who's school aged and going to be returning in the fall, but I do feel for all of the parents who have to make these hard decisions. You know, some of my closest friends have said, well, my child's not going anywhere. And then I have others who said, well, you know, if we take the proper precautions, everything will be okay. But we are talking about, you know, school age children who, once they are out of their parents' line of sight, we don't know how they will behave. You know, we can only assume. And this does not help it. It doesn't help it at all. So,
well, there's a question that Terry McLean asked about DHEC. Says DHEC says after 10 days, if you are still showing symptoms, you are no longer contagious. Well, you know, it depends on what kind of symptoms you're showing. The biggest one is if you're having fevers. Okay. If you're having fevers so let me, in other words, I use 14 days. Okay. What I do over, you know, with my patients and what I do over at Coastal, we're looking at 14 days. Okay. That's the first thing. 14 days from the test. If the person's still having symptoms, then there's a possibility that they're still infectious to some degree. So if you've got a child, if you've got somebody that is still having some symptoms, then there's a chance that they still may be shedding virus. Now, it depends on what symptoms they are. And that's why you have to really kind of talk to a physician about this, particularly a physician who has seen a lot of these cases. The fatigue, that may last for weeks. Okay, that doesn't mean you're infectious then. It just means that, you know, you still got some symptoms, particularly if you've been coughing a lot and you have some chest tightness and congestion. The smell and the taste, those symptoms can linger on for weeks to even months in some cases after having COVID. Doesn't necessarily mean you are still infectious, but you still could be having some of those symptoms. So what you have to do is kind of put a picture together. So in other words, I've had, I think, over 30 now patients that have had COVID, and I talk to them at least once a week. Okay. So what happens is that I have to put a picture together as to whether or not I can tell them they can say, I think they're safe to go back to work, or whether or not I think they're safe, whether they need to just stay at home and take more time. Because here's what happens in another thing, that when you get a virus, particularly a novel or new virus like COVID, your body kind of goes into a state of, I want to say shock for lack of a better word, but your body's immune system tries to go to focus on that virus. If the cells your immune cells are focusing towards a virus, it could potentially make it easier for a bacterial infection to slip through the back door. So that's the reason why you got to make sure that you take the time to get the rest, the proper hydration, the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that you need to get in so that you can try to help boost your immune system as much as you can.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Mack, we've pretty much run the numbers, and I know sometimes by this time we have new information, but because of the new restrictions, I don't know if you have anything else to add as far as local data is concerned. Now's the time while he's, taking a look at his research for you to post any other questions or comments you have. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in again today and supporting us as we give you the COVID-19 updates and share with you the data and just experiences that Dr. Mack can talk about because he's in the trenches and he knows what's going on. Thank you, Christopher Bellamy, for joining in today. LaPetria Dawn Anderson and Sonia Ford, really do appreciate it. Bonnie Edie, appreciate it as well. And, some of our viewers have even posted, some of the things that you talked about in terms of symptoms earlier, terrible coughing, runny nose, bloodshot red eyes. And then as Bonnie Edie says, your body's not the same after having the virus. So, all things to consider as we, work hard to make sure we're protecting ourselves. And just make sure that you are wearing masks. Make sure you are washing your hands as always. I mean, we can't sing that song enough. I think I'm going to pull everybody together and we're going to do it as a mass choir and get Sister Charlene to help us out. But and maybe a few others. But I it still amazes me when I go to Walmart and other stores and people are walking around with no protection on whatsoever. Or wearing the mask under their noses like this. This is not how you wear the mask. So do everything you can. When you can honestly say at the end of the night, I have done everything I could possibly do as I was going about and being a part of the public to make sure that I didn't contribute or bring anything home to my family, then you should be able to not only sleep well at night, but you should feel good that you've done your part to try and curb this virus. And yes, as I said a few weeks ago, Sonia Ford, mask up. Make sure you mask up. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, with Dr. Mack, you have any?
Well, it's important. I mean, the concern is that this has really become a political thing. And if you look, the states that are getting hammered are the states that really pretty much have been following what the president has been saying and following his lead. Places like Canada, places like Germany, where they've taken this seriously, the numbers have gone down. It's no coincidence that the two countries that are being hit the hardest, that have the worst cases, the most cases of COVID, the two countries right now are Brazil and the United States. Even with the president of Brazil having COVID-19, he's still downplaying it.
It's mind-blowing.
No coincidence that the United States and Brazil have the highest cases because it's following the leader.
And I don't think we talk much about Georgia, but what's going on in Georgia right now is beyond ridiculous.
Unbelievable. I mean, it seems like all these people are trying to position themselves for some kind of position in the cabinet because this is crazy. I mean, with all the stuff that's going on in Georgia, the governor wants to sue the mayor of Atlanta. I mean, isn't there more things going on in the state of Georgia besides that? I mean, it's a power play. And that's what's happening. The having all this information sent to the CDC was a power play. What Georgia's doing with the governor versus Keisha Lance Bottoms is a power play. And when healthcare issues become a political item, people die. And that's the bottom line.
Bottom line.
So, people, please protect yourselves. There's going to have to be some tough decisions that are going to have to be made about schools. And I have no doubt that they're going to open up the schools. Okay, it's going to happen.
It's happening.
I just hope that the plan is in place, provisions are in place, and that even goes down to athletics. And South Carolina High School League has just announced that they're going to have athletics that are going to start up. The governor in Virginia has probably been the one governor, he and Cuomo, that have been really proactive in trying to protect their residents. The state of Virginia will have no sports played in the fall. No high school sports will be played in the state of Virginia in the fall. That's strong. Now, what it is too, is that the governor of Virginia is a physician. So he understands that the numbers are what they are. The data doesn't lie. The numbers are what they are. And so when you look at that and they come out this strong and say, look, there'll be no sports. And I hate it because I'm a sports guy. I mean, you know, that's what I do.
Part of your work is in sports.
Yeah. And so I understand the mental health side of these young people not playing sports. I get it. But I just hope that the powers that be that are making these decisions are understanding what they're taking on and that they can be as proactive as possible. Because by the time you become reactive with a novel virus, you're already behind.
That's right.
So, you know, I know for what I'm directly involved with the college athletic side, it's still a whole lot of up and down. And I got asked a question from a guy. Actually, I went to college and med school with him, and he's a physician at an HBCU. He's got sports medicine team doc at HBCU. He was asking me questions about, you know, colleges opening up and or still continuing to play sports. And I said, if that college does not have a physician that has decision-making authority, if that college doesn't have a robust testing plan in place, not only to get tests, but to get them back in a timely manner. If that school doesn't have places to house positive people away from other people, you don't need to be playing sports. I have to give hats off to my alma mater, not because I love them, but because it is what it is. Morehouse was the first scholarship school to say there will be no, in the United States, to say there will be no sports play. And so in the fall, so it's big. And again, I love sports. I'm a sports guy. I play sports, but this is big. And all these people that are making these decisions need to make sure that they understand what it is that they're deciding on.
And I think the parents who have young people who are actually playing sports or involved in any type of athletic or collegiate group activity that may resume in the fall, you all need to ask the proper questions as well.
Right.
Whenever your students are returning to school. Don't just leave it up to the school officials to tell you what it is that they want you to know. Ask the proper questions, because if you don't ask, you know what that implies. And you want to make sure that you've done everything you possibly can to get all the information, like he says, to make the decision that you need to make that's best for you and your student. Because beyond athletics, we know that these COVID cases don't always end in a positive way. And God forbid your child comes down with, a case and does not recover or has extensive damage and then can't even resume their athletic career. Then it's beyond the point. It's besides the point. And so, just make sure that you're asking the questions as well. You're involved. You're at the table and involved in these conversations.
I had a buddy of mine who called me he was in Missouri. And they're actually, I don't know if this is the whole state, but certainly some parts of it that are wanting these kids to sign death waivers.
I wish they would. No.
Now, if you've got to have somebody sign a death waiver, they probably shouldn't be playing.
Correct.
So, again, it's just mind blowing, some of the stuff that's going around, and again, just protect yourself. That's all I can say. I mean, we've been doing this now for what, 16 weeks now?
16 weeks. Yeah.
And so I'm just the narrative ultimately does not change. Wash your hands, hand sanitizer, wear your mask, social physical distancing, take care of yourself, be good stewards of your neighbors, your community. If somebody comes around you and they're not wearing a mask, they're disrespecting you. And I mean, I don't let people come around me without a mask on unless I pretty much know their whereabouts. Because you don't know who that person's been around and who that person's been around.
That's right. That's right. The domino effect. You have no idea. I'm gonna put this in the conversation as we close out, just something for you to think about. And this was said to me earlier today, and I thought it was pretty interesting, an interesting perspective from someone. But, you know, we have a lot of people who are doing things to get by. They're launching their dream businesses and doing a lot of things from home. Please, by every means, make sure you are using the appropriate sanitary precautions whenever you are doing the things that you're doing from home. I can't stress that enough. And I'm not putting anybody on blast, but this was said to me and I was like, you know, this is a pretty interesting perception, and pretty soon it's going to be a very loud conversation. But if you're selling food from your home, you've got containers rolling out. It's the same thing as someone buying something from a grocery store or, you know, a restaurant or whatever. You know, our routine has been to come home and discard packages just to make sure that we aren't transmitting the viruses into our homes. And you got to be mindful if you're preparing foods and even items to whatever that you're doing, you know, mask up, do the things that you need to do to make sure that you're not transmitting, especially since we now know that you may be carrying it and you not even know it. So everyone needs to be very mindful of what they are doing, all activities, because we have no idea of what's happening from one day to the next, from one extreme to the next. And, you know, we are running the risk of creating these other ways for people to become exposed and infected. So I just want to put that out there. Not trying to step on anybody's toes, but these are things to think about as you, you know, move through your entrepreneurial, and we are the network. So, and I'm talking business. So just think about those things. And
I'll take it a step further. Hair and nails in your house.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So again, I'm a businessman. I've got multiple businesses. I get it. I understand. If you've got a talent to do those things, I get it. But please protect yourself and protect your clients, your customers. Please protect people. Because if you're having people coming in your house and you're doing their hair and nails, you don't know where they've been.
That's right.
So make sure, I would suggest mask and a shield. If you're going to be close to somebody and you're doing their hair and doing their nails, particularly if you're doing it in your house, mask and shield. Because again, you don't know what that person's coming into your house with.
That's right.
And they may say, I feel fine. You may have a thermometer to check their temperature when they walk in, and they may not have a fever. But that doesn't mean that they're not one of the 40% that are asymptomatic positive people. So, you know, again, I get it. I'm a businessman. I get it. Get yours. I get it.
Do you? Don't do everybody else.
Right. But just make sure that you're protecting yourself.
That's right.
And make sure you're protecting the person you're taking care of, and make sure you're protecting your household and your community.
Absolutely.
And yes.
Yeah, exactly, Doc. Yeah. So just be careful, everyone. And just want to thank you all for joining us today. Just want to make a note. Of course, you know, I'm also on the Whittemore Community Magazine, which airs at 7 p.m. on Monday evenings. And I really would appreciate everyone's support of that particular community news magazine and the live program that we bring every single Monday evening. This Monday, we actually are going to have Daryl Brown from Horry County School District, and he's going to talk with us about the reopening of schools. And we're working on talking points right now as far as things that, we want him to cover that we'll discuss during that particular broadcast. So I'm going to ask that if you have any questions or comments that you'd like for me to include in the talking points, that you just add them to this particular thread, or you can just, send me an inbox message. If you have my, some of you have my cell phone number, you can text me comments and questions if you like, or like I said, inbox me on Facebook. But we will be talking to someone from Horry County Schools on Monday. And of course, I'll make sure to share some of the concerns and thoughts that have kind of come up as a result of understanding this data that Dr. MciVer shares with us every single week. Yes, Dr. Mac.
One more thing I want to say, and this is kind of off the note here, off the subject, what we're talking about right now. But if you all are looking for something good to do during this quarantine time, 2 things I would recommend. If you've got the Disney Channel or whatever, go look at Hamilton. Okay. I saw it on Broadway about 3 years ago, and it was wonderful. I saw it again about 3 weeks ago when they started running it on the Disney Plus or whatever. Also tonight, something to do. On PBS, they're supposed to have Porgy and Bess,
okay.
which is an opera which I got a chance to see several times in Atlanta when I was living there, and it is on tonight on PBS. I'm not sure what time, but that's something, to kind of take your mind off of what's going on. It's a wonderful play. The setting is right in Charleston. The backdrop of Porgy and Bess is in Charleston, and so I would encourage you to look at that, particularly if you've never seen it, and even if you've seen it before, I would still recommend seeing it again. But Hamilton was very good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it there on Broadway, and I certainly enjoyed seeing it again on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm. I also want to mention that today I had the honor of being a part of the virtual conference hosted by Optimism Preventive Services. Denise Chapman and Denzon Winley did a fabulous job, absolutely fabulous job with day 1 of the conference, and day 2 is tomorrow, and it starts at 10 a.m. They're going to have a few more sessions. And today's session, we actually featured some members of, or I would say they featured some members of the Peace Corps who talked about their work in Africa, particularly they were in Sierra Leone, and talked about, just why it's important for our young people to understand the globalized world and what's beyond our natural borders. Horry County, Georgetown County, all the counties represented who are actually people viewing today. Not only was it just a lesson in what they learned and experienced and the comparisons between what happens in the U.S. and what happens in other countries, but we got a great French lesson from homeboy Pierre Johnson, who's from Conway, and he's a French teacher. And we got a French 101 lesson. And then we also talked with Claire Polk, who is a phenomenal young woman. She had the most beautiful natural, and it was big and bodacious. It was beautiful. But she is the U.S. diplomat to Jamaica. And this young woman talked to us about how she happened into that field. She's been working for the State Department for 2 years. So as you're picking up, the cultural things that Dr. Matt just talked about with Hamilton and Porgy and Bess, also go back to that particular broadcast and watch, because it was very enriching. Watch with your children, watch with your teens, especially if they're trying to figure out, some next steps in life. And I co-sign it, not because I was a moderator, but because I too learned something and gained so much from that particular experience today. You can probably find it on any of my Facebook pages. Whittemore Community Magazine, go to Optimism Preventive Services Facebook page. And I think the Bunnell Foundation, which actually hosted the technology for that particular program, you could probably find it on that page as well. But it was phenomenal. So just make sure you watch it with your children, watch it with your teens. Just watch it, period. you'll pick up a lot from that. So
Right.
just want to thank everyone today for joining us, and just please remain safe. Thank you, Wendy Anderson, for tuning in again today. Janet Thompson, Denise Chapman, I see you peeping in. And we just want to say, Amitra, hey, Griffin, thank you so much. Just want to say thank you again for joining us and for supporting us over these 16 weeks. And we'll continue to do it as long as God says so. And Dr. Mack has the strength and the knowledge to bring it here, because I can't do it. And thank you, Ms. MciVer, for lending him to us. We appreciate it. Oh, Ms. MciVer.
I'm surprised my mama didn't chime in and say anything.
I know. She did say thank you.
I do want to say this on a positive note. Worldwide, there has been 8.4 million people that have recovered. In the United States, there's been 1.7 million people that have recovered. So this is doable. We can do it. We just have to have the right heart, the right spirit to do this. And people are getting better.
Yeah.
You know, but again, we still want to focus on what's at hand, and that's these trending numbers to still keep giving information. Yeah. And you talked my mama up.
I did, and your sister.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can definitely I'm sure you made them proud today. You make us proud every week, so thank you very much. And as Paul Campbell from Atlanta says, the recovery numbers are good, but I get sick of people just trying to go at those numbers instead of the case numbers. Yeah, you're right. You know,
the case numbers and the hospital numbers. And that's the reason why most physicians are so upset that hospital information is bypassing the CDC. Because the way that you can really tell that this is spreading is by the hospitalization numbers.
That's scandalous.
And that's the reason why that is so worrisome and concerning, especially coming up on election time. And let's keep it real. That's what this is about.
Bloop. Okay. Well, nothing else to be said after that. Again, thank you all so much. And we will be back next week. Same time, same bat channel. Thank you, Dr. Mack.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Griffin.
All right. And God bless.
Right.